Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to a special video where I'm going to go through albums that I bought for $1 that changed my life. So we've all been to those places that have the dollar bin. And if you're a new up and coming music fan, you're a kid. For me, I was probably like 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that time frame. You didn't have a lot of money. You go to the dollar bin, you take a chance on something, you get home, you pop it on, and it blows your mind. And that's what these albums are here. These are ones that I bought for one reason or the other, and then it changed my life. And so I've got a bunch of these to run through with you guys. I'm gonna do that here in just a bit. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel, and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on really cool topics like this one here, where albums I bought for $1 that changed my life. And I would venture a bet that probably a lot of these albums did the same for you guys as well. So let's you jump in the time machine, so to speak, and head on back and talk about this and relive some great memories. First, I actually want to sort of show you where I was at mentally at the time. I've got two albums here that were from my older brothers. This was the stuff they were listening to. I would have been about 7 at the time, so this kind of sets me on my musical path. One of them being Journey Frontiers from '83, their 8th studio album. I mean, I love this for a number of reasons. I thought the art was cool on this thing. They're parachuting out the back. I mean, I love the songs. The opening song on here, Separate Ways, Worlds Apart, just grabbed me as a kid, but lots and lots of stuff. The song Chain Reaction, I remember being the big one, asking my brother to play that for me over and over. And another one that my brothers would play, Queen, The Game from 1980, their 8th studio album. And I don't necessarily think it was the album cover or anything. I think I legitimately just really liked the music on here. Dragon Attack, but probably another one, Bites the Dust, if I remember correctly. I think that one just grabbed me. But so my mind was at the Queen and Journey sort of marker. My brothers had set me up, and then I started getting into my own stuff like Quiet Riot and Twisted Sister and stuff, and I started off going down the road of the heavy metal, glam metal stuff first before I branched out, and I now listen to all the different stuff that I do. And the music store, for any of you guys that are from Clearwater, Florida, or remember Vinyl Museum, that's where I went. They had the dollar bin for me. And if you were lucky, sometimes they had the bin where it would be 10 for $1 in it. And so a lot of these say dollar, $1.99, stuff like that on it, but they were either purchased for $1 or even, I know some of these were part of the 10 for $1 stack that I would get at different times. First one was probably literally maybe the first one that I bought to take a chance on, and it was just simply because of the album art. Boston, their self-titled debut, 1976. Incidentally, I'm born in 76, so I'm 48, getting ready to turn 49, and this one here has always meant a lot to me simply because of that. When I remember flipping it over and realizing it came out the year that I was born, that just connected me to it even more. But I saw this and I just thought, wow, what is that for $1? I've got to check these guys out. I remember thinking, though, the guys on the back didn't look all that cool, but when you had a cool album cover like that. Now, the thing is, when I got home, I didn't know that I was going to know songs like More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, Rock and Roll Band, and I don't know if I knew all of those just yet. I know I knew More Than a Feeling. If you guys remember the commercial for Freedom Rock, all right, it was one of those TV commercials that came on and it would, sounds of the 70s or whatever, and you'd buy these albums on from the TV, and it was just compilations, greatest hits. Well, More Than a Feeling was one of those songs that would play during that, and I might have only even known it from that at the time. I have no idea. But I do remember getting home and loving that opening track. The layering, the production, the guitar sound, all that sort of stuff that came from this was right in my wheelhouse, because remember, I'm probably buying these around like 89, 90, 91, 92, somewhere in that late 80s, early 90s time frame. But it's after Def Leppard's Hysteria. And Def Leppard and Hysteria was basically a modern version of the production and the layering of instrumentation and things that had first been done on this album by Tom Scholz. So for me, at least, hearing this, I was in heaven. I loved that album. I just thought that thing was the greatest. And some of these I bought from things where it's like I knew the name of the band or I knew one song. The next one is that it's the Cars' Greatest Hits. This was a 1985 compilation. I wasn't yet at that point where I wanted to buy only albums and get into the band, buy an album. Sometimes it was just which album or comp had the biggest amount of songs that I knew on it. And I don't necessarily know which ones of these I knew particularly, but I do know that Just What I Needed, let's see, Good Times Roll, Drive, My Best Friend's Girl. I'm pretty sure I knew all of those. Some of those were still getting played from MTV, the new wave era that they were part of, but the Cars, I picked that up and found that I loved everything on here, and it made me a fan of theirs. But a lot of times, like I said, I was just taking a chance on something based on the name of the band or whatever. And that was the case with this next one here, Chicago 17, 1984, their 14th studio album, and incidentally last with Peter Cetera. Now, the interesting thing is I knew Peter Cetera before I knew that he was part of Chicago. So I remember Glory of Love from the Karate Kid movies and finding out that he was part of Chicago. Well, I went and I bought a Chicago album that he was part of, and then having the songs like Stay the Night, Hard Habit to Break, You're the Inspiration. I think when I heard that one on here, I probably immediately knew that that song. But these were albums where, again, just taking the chance on them. And I think I bought this one because I liked the album art on it. I also knew that I liked music that was from 83, 84. So a lot of the stuff, if I had an option of buying something out of the 70s or a band that had put something out in the 80s, a lot of times I picked up stuff like that. I remember taking a chance and buying Jethro Tull's Undercover album, and I forget what year that was, if that was like 84, but that was not what I was hoping it would be at the time. That was a misstep of an album, but one that I bought because of the 80s. So next one, totally an album cover purchase. Eagles, One of These Nights. Look, you can even still see the $1.99 this record store. Vinyl Museum used to do it in the grease pencil like that. As a kid, I didn't care about that. I don't even know if today that would come off or not, but I leave it there now for nostalgic reasons. But if I saw an album that somebody wrote on, I wouldn't want it, not even for $1 today. Also thought that back cover of these guys looked really cool. The big rose, I thought was pretty awesome on. I think that's Don Felder there. But yeah, man, I looked at that and I saw the skull all painted up like that, Native American style. I just thought that was super, super cool. Popped this thing on, and the song One of These Nights sold it for me, hands down. I remember getting up in the mornings, like after I'd gotten this, the record player in my house was in the living room. It was my parents'. I didn't have a record player at least yet, so I could only listen to it out there after everyone was awake. And I remember getting up in the mornings and going out there and waiting and being able to play this and doing it like morning after morning after morning. So many other good songs. Lion Eyes is on here, Take It to the Limit and stuff, but still to this day, One of These Nights, that song is one of my absolute favorite ones by the Eagles. And if I have to pick a favorite album, it's this one. And I don't know if it's specifically nostalgia or I just picked the right one the first time. And remember, the Eagles weren't together by the late 80s, early 90s. So when I was buying it, it wasn't like they were even being discussed and out there promoting anything. So there wasn't anything even to go on in terms of that sort of stuff. This next one here, definitely bought for the album cover. Sammy Hagar, Standing Hampton, 1982. sixth solo album from him, first released for Geffen Records, which would make it, a resurgence for him. Now, he was already in Van Halen at this point, and I was buying it because I was a fan of Van Halen after 5150, OU812. I probably bought this before For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, but not entirely sure the sequence of events. But yeah, seeing that cover here, and of course, if you don't know the history behind it or the reason of the name itself, standing Hampton is slang in British language for having an erection. So Hampton being slang for a penis and standing. So that's how it got the name of Standing Hampton. And of course, really good album cover to help sell that, right, to a young boy. But this one here, you can actually see the $1 on it. And I thought this was kind of cool. Christy Neff owned this before me, so shout out to Christy Neff if she's anywhere for having sold this album so that I could get it. But certainly bought it for that. But looking at this here, There's Only One Way to Rock was on here. Baby's on Fire, Heavy Metal, I'll Fall in Love Again. I mean, so many great songs from Hagar's solo years were on this stuff. And I honestly can't say that when I listened to this, whether or not I knew those at that time. But it's definitely become one of those things after the fact, because I really like the production on this, and Keith Olsen is the producer of this. So it became one of those things where I started keeping an eye out for certain producers. If I really liked an album and I saw the sound of an album, and then I saw a producer, and so I became a big fan of Keith Olsen. But this just made my love of not only Van Halen but of Sammy Hagar go through the roof, and from that point on, had to get more stuff. Next one, Kansas Best of, their 1984 compilation. This being the original, of course, because it has since been superseded on CD, where they changed the track listing. They've added more from the original era, but this has Perfect Lover. That was one brand new song at the time by the brand new lineup. I didn't know anything about that. I'm sure I was buying this probably for Dust in the Wind. I might have known Carry On Wayward Son. Don't think so. I think I knew the song Dust in the Wind, and I popped this thing on, and Carry On Wayward Son, just again, it's one of those songs that you imagine the first time hearing that ever and it just blowing your mind. But then as I went through this thing, like I'm saying, even if I knew that song, Dust in the Wind, Point of No Return, it was when I got to the songs Play the Game Tonight and Fight Fire with Fire, which was the 80s, the newer era of the band, that I just went head over heels for Kansas at that point. And that became my favorite era of the group, that 80s era with John Elefante and his, the other guys that were in the lineup. But this album here, I just played incessantly over and over and over, loving that, digging deeper into it. It was a long time until the middle 90s, I think in around 95, if not mistaken, when Freaks of Nature came out. And I remember getting that and being heavily disappointed because it really didn't have the feel of anything that was from either the classic era or the 80s era of the group. But still, this turned me on to Kansas, and I've been a fan of Kansas ever since, and long since gone back and explored a lot more. All right, next one, Steve Perry, Street Talk from 1984, his debut solo album. I'm quite sure I bought this for Oh Sherry, the opening track on here, but the reality is, having already been a fan of Journey, and Journey wasn't together putting anything out at that time. Steve Perry was still doing stuff. In fact, I know that by, I want to say 94, he was putting out an album, so I could have actually been buying this later, closer to that era. But, seeing this, knowing who Steve Perry was from my Journey days, so to speak, growing up with my older brothers, I know I was buying it for that. I thought the album cover was just cool, the way this was written, everything on it. I have to say that I do remember that another connection here was that the movie The Doors had come out, and I learned who Bruce Botnick as the Doors producer was. And so the fact that he was on here, as executive producer Bruce Botnick. One of the reasons that I was tuning in and grabbing this was for that reason. But like all of these albums here, I just became big fans of these artists going forward from that point, whether as solo or the original bands that they were part of. This next one is going to make total sense to you when I hold it up here. Pink Floyd, Animals, 1977, their 10th studio album. This one here, which says $1.99 on it, but like I said, I either got this for $1 or even one of the 10 for $1. Yep, I mean it's the gatefold, and it's an original one. Heavily beat up. A lot of these, if you haven't already noticed, the reason they were in the dollar bins was, you know, they were beat up, bent corners, whatever on them. But it allowed me to get into it. And I knew of Pink Floyd. This is before the Division Bell, which I consider to be my era of the band. And I certainly knew of Pink Floyd from '87, Momentary Lapse of Reason, Learning to Fly. But I didn't really know them. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't understand the long form song versus short songs like Money. And this one here having 3 of those long form songs on it, I just remember that putting this on, and first of all, looking at the backside of this and seeing that Pigs on the Wing and then Dogs. Well, there's only 2 songs on the first side, and then the second side has Pigs, Sheep, and Pigs on the Wing. It was like, wow, wait, what's this? Why is the album so short? Of course, I learned otherwise when I got home. But this really exposed me to progressive rock, more so than Kansas did. This was really eye-opening, diving deep into this. And this became an album that I would play at dinner time. My mom would sometimes let me pick albums to play, music in the background. I said, you know, if we play Christmas carols in the background during dinner time of that year, why can't we listen to regular music the rest of the year? And she said, yeah, sure, why not? And she used to let me pick. And I tried to pick things that I thought everyone could enjoy, even if it was not their cup of tea. And so this one having more mellow, ethereal style sounding music to it, I thought my mom could get behind it. It wouldn't be, wasn't like trying to play some metal band or something. So I played this thing a lot. And I actually remember my mom actually really enjoying this one, but just was one of those albums that fit so many different moods and became, it was just so different than everything else I was listening to that by the time 94 rolls around and Division Bell comes out, then I'm head over heels into Pink Floyd, getting everything I can possibly get. But early stuff like this was what was starting it for me. All right, next one. Police, Synchronicity, 1983, their 5th and final solo album. I actually bought this. I was a fan of Sting first. And I'd had Soul Cages, but I must have had a CD single that had a live version of King of Pain. And I didn't know that was a Police song. Initially, I thought it was a Sting solo song. When I found out it was a Police song, and on this album, I specifically hunted this down. But then, of course, you know, you look at this and you're like, well, it's got Every Breath You Take, Wrapped Around Your Finger on here, Walking in Your Footsteps. I mean, lots and lots of great songs on here. And certainly I knew the song. I remember knowing Every Breath You Take when I heard that off of here, but it became one of those things that I realized I was even an even bigger fan of the Police than Sting solo. I just only knew Sting because he had put that out at the time, and I liked that album. I had bought that and then wanted more of that, and it was a weird time, you know. As a kid, I didn't have a lot of money, so it wasn't as simple as just going and buying another Sting album. A lot of times I didn't buy things brand new like that because that was a lot of money. That was several weeks of saving allowance or whatever it might have been to get it. So if I could go to the used record store and something was only $1, I could take a chance on it if I had a couple bucks in my pocket, and if I didn't like it, it wasn't the end of the world. So that's how a lot of these things got tried. And you can see from what I'm showing you guys, that's where my collection just grew from. And it's a lot of the bands that I still talk about to this day. I follow every single one of these. You've seen me talk about This album is not only the greatest album of 1978, but my personal favorite one from the band. Rolling Stones, Some Girls, I think is their best album. It is my go-to album. When I was doing ranking of the albums by year, I picked this one as the best one from 78. This was their 14th studio album. I think one of the reasons I loved it at the time was the die cut part of this. I mean, I knew who the Rolling Stones were from my mom. I didn't own anything from them. And I don't think I knew any of the song titles off the back of this. But it was one to take a chance on, and it was cool. It was die cut, so I bought it. But then hearing the songs Miss You and Beast of Burden and Shattered, and this one, which I didn't know at the time or understand, had sort of a disco flair to it. A lot of the bass lines in it were part of that. And so disco-infused rock, as I like to call it. And this album, having had some of that as part of it, really shaped that side of me, loving albums that way. And I always go back to this album because of that. I remember it again was just one of those ones that the sound of it was so different than everything else I was listening to. I had not heard music played this way, but loving it just the same. And, I don't know, just the whole thing, the package, the track listing, lots of other great songs. And so whether or not it's because it's the first Rolling Stones album I ever bought, or it is actually just that great, I'll never know, but I do love that album. All right, and this last one here is and probably was bought on the same day as the first one I showed you, Boston's self-titled Rush Moving Picture. So I'm pretty sure I knew the name of the band. I didn't know anything by them or what to buy or song names or anything of that nature. So I bought this one because it too, in the dollar bin, it's got that $1 grease pencil thing on it. I still love seeing those. It puts a smile on my face for some reason. And popping this on and hearing Tom Sawyer on it, and then 3 tracks later, Limelight, and I did know those once I heard them, but can you imagine the first time dropping the needle on an album and hearing Tom Sawyer, that, I guess that's the keyboard, the synthesizer that comes in and does that. I don't know, it blew my mind. I saw Terry Brown was the producer on this. It made me go follow him into other things later on. But everything about this, it was just one of those cool album covers. It's like, what does that mean? Look at that building in the background. Everything about it. I don't even know what else to say, because it was such a life-changing album from this point forward for me and the band Rush, that it's almost no words, that I can attach to what I felt hearing this album for the first time, and just kind of saying to myself, wow, there's other kinds of music out there. There's stuff beyond heavy metal. There's stuff beyond the glam metal that I'm listening to. Where is that stuff, and how do I get more of it, sort of thing. So I remember, like I said, I think buying the Boston debut album, and that one was the first time I'd gone in and took a chance on records. And I remember returning to the dollar bin a lot after that and finding many, many more, because I'd had such good experience. And of course, I found all those other ones that were in between there. So I think I showed you 11 ones that I bought for $1, plus those 2 that were from my older brothers that I would, still keep in the collection to this day. So in all, 13 albums there that all changed my life and did it for next to nothing. So I hold these up and I can tell you, without a doubt, I spent $11 or less, because like I said, some of these I know were on bargain days when it was 10 for $1, a dime a piece. But can you imagine getting that many great albums? You can't do that today. Even dollar bins today aren't going to have that kind of stuff in it. So lots of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, going sort of in the time machine back with me to the days when I first got those records, why I bought them, impact it had on me when I first played it. There's never going to be another time like that, but Interestingly, I still have moments like that today. If you guys haven't tuned in and watched one of my video series that's along the lines of the underrated and obscure albums, I just recently did one with Grant Arthur from Rock Warehouse. But I've done other ones like this. Those are albums that I didn't know anything about. I took a chance on them for one reason or the other, the label that puts it out or a member that was in the group that I knew from something else. And those blew my mind. So even today, that kind of stuff can still happen. And in my opinion, it's one of the greatest feelings. And that's what this was here. And it was great to be able to share that with you and go down the nostalgic road on that memory trip. All right, everyone, take care. Have a good one. And I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.